Welcome to another episode of Ascendle Unscripted. I'm Michael Cinquino, your host and curious generalist. But as always, I'm on with not one, but two specialists today. We have guest Amy Heymans, who is Chief Strategy Officer and Founder at Beneficent. And we have Ascendle's own President, Diana Bourns. Welcome to you both.
Hey, Michael. Thanks, Michael, for having us.
Absolutely, and always. And if you're familiar with Ascendle Unscripted, we just like to dive right in. And Amy, I'd like to start with you, if that's okay. Your background combines service design and futures thinking. How do you feel these disciplines are helping companies navigate the AI revolution, and it is a bit of a revolution, in customer experience?
Yeah, absolutely. So I like to take a step back and sort of look at the evolution that I've witnessed over the past 25 years. So from print to then digital web to then mobile web and apps to now AI empowered experiences, right? So service design or customer experience design is looking at the ecosystem of interaction and trying to orchestrate and plan for all of the touch points so as to optimize the experience that people ultimately want so that they're getting the value and so that the business is also successful. So you look across the customer lifecycle from acquisition to satisfaction, retention, and advocacy. So really trying to create those win-win circles when you look across the customer journey. When you blend that thinking about how to optimize positive and deliver positive experiences, and you blend that with futures thinking, you start to envision what possible futures there may be. Now, futures can be possible, plausible, or preferable. And so when you sort of unlock your imagination to consider what are the various futures, how do we avoid, the undesirable ones that could happen, or how do we react if they do happen? And then also, how do we set forth to aspire to create an experience that's going to deliver value for the business and people served by the business? So engaging clients and organizations and people in frameworks from futures thinking can help us to start to define what these experiences are like so that we can implement them ultimately. And with AI, what I'm seeing as a professional is things that we've wanted to do with digital and technology for years are now possible. So empowering people with agents that do the work, the sort of dirty work, the minutia, the administrative stuff that folks wouldn't choose to do, don't want to spend time doing, so that they can spend time on the human connections and the relationships and actually doing the things that matter most.
Amy, thanks for that. Diana, I have a question on strategy, but before we go there, Amy, you maybe think of a film analogy and this idea that things we wanted to do before we can now do. And from a film perspective, that's not always a good thing. In that Star Wars was made at a time where there really was no CGI. And they were out on a parking lot with plastic planes doing actually live action. So there was no CGI to create anything. So the special effects that came into play in the original Star Wars were there because they had to be there. Now we're in a place where if we can conceive it, we can do it. And if you've watched a Marvel film lately, it is just, for me at least, too much. So the question I have for you is, how do you feel we can balance the look now what we can do versus should we do it? And I'll leave one more movie reference. Jeff Goldblum in the original Jurassic Park, you never thought about, you realize all these things you could do, but you never thought about whether you should. So do you feel like at this early stage, some leaders should be thinking about, should we versus could we?
Yeah, I love it. In fact, there's something I like to point out, which is it's really easy to imagine the apocalypse, but it's really hard to imagine a world where everything is working together harmoniously. And so there is a futures thinking technique called rigorous imagining, where a group set its sights on thinking about what a positive situation looks like and describing it with all the senses, and then sort of backtracking. It's called backcasting. What needs to be true and in order to enable that future. But to your point, they were so busy figuring out if they could that they never stopped to see if they should. That's where ethics comes into play, right? To consider what are the principles, looking at moral philosophy, looking at human dignity. How do we abide by what humans need most, and consider, are we actually ultimately improving human experiences and outcomes, or are we creating situations and solutions that will ultimately detract from the lives we live? And where we are now is we're in the thick of it, right? So the solutions that we're creating are either going to drive impact at scale rapidly or do harm at scale rapidly. And so again, back to futures thinking, to imagine the unintended consequences of these various situations. And movies, again, a great example. You watch a sci-fi movie, a lot of ethicists watch sci-fi movies to uncover, okay, what could go wrong if it's a surveillance society, or if the climate situation worsens, right? To sort of figure out, okay, what are the parts of this that we can, again, seek to avoid by taking a principled approach.
Amy, thank you for that. Diana, from Ascendle's perspective, from the could should, what are you seeing from a, we need AI because we can. So where do you folks come in, or what are your thoughts, or what are you seeing around doing this strategically?
Absolutely. The could should really rang true when Amy mentioned it a minute ago. We feel like we have to have AI because we can, and our board is asking us, what are our plans? How are we implementing it in our product? And, to try to take a step back and do it strategically, and not just to do it, because we can, is something that we're working through with our clients continuously. We're always kind of preaching the iterative and incremental. So when it comes to, okay, if you want to go down that road, let's think of an iterative or a small piece to start with. Let's focus on one use case and implement it there. And of course, we often talk about OKRs and ROI and all that businessy stuff. So how will this implementation, even if it's this little piece of AI, and maybe it's, scrubbing your data to try to detect some trends. I think it's really useful when it comes to customer support and, scrubbing all of the tickets to see what are the trends there, and can that inform some new feature development. So that's not even necessarily customer-facing AI, but making use of the technology to be able to, narrow down what features it is that your customers want and need, even if you aren't able to speak to every customer, or even customers sometimes don't know what they need. They just know that they have the pain, right? So focusing on pain points. We had this quote come up, Michael. It came up in one of our Ascendle Unscripted episodes, but it also came up in a meeting, I think yesterday, was that if Henry Ford had asked his customers what they wanted, they would have said faster horses. So it's funny that this theme keeps coming up. Sometimes customers don't know what the solution is, and which is probably good, right? That they're not focused on the how, but they know what their pain points are. And so I think going back to basics and really understanding customers' pain points to help inform how to make use of the current technologies of AI, whether it's using AI to help us do our job better as product strategists and as solution providers, or is it using AI as a customer-facing tool? And I think we'll talk more about that too, because there are, of course, a lot of implications in terms of cost, feasibility, time to implement, and all that.
As you were speaking, Guy, something that came up for me was that it sounds like a lot of what Ascendle does is that implementation strategy. I know it sounds overly simplistic, but the image that I'm getting is when you do scrub tickets or you do look at customer pain points, you're able to start to do this connecting of dots and to connect dots very, very intentionally. And they go, okay, this is a problem you have. It's a prevalent problem. This solution has been around for a little while, so it's not a high risk. It's like here's where we can make some implementations that are going to have positive impact while at the same time lowering the possibility that Amy had mentioned earlier at causing harm at scale. Is that accurate?
Yeah. Yes. And I keep thinking back to, it's an older study. I think it was actually a book, The Effortless Experience, which I had read only a summary of. But it talks about how customers aren't looking necessarily to be delighted, which is funny because that's a term we used to use at Ascendle quite often. We want our customers to be delighted. Well, this study said that they don't want to just be delighted. They want an effortless experience. So when we're talking about customer experience, and I think it has become more and more challenging to have customer loyalty, right? It's not just, if our customers are delighted, we will have loyalty and they will stay with us. Today's informed customer knows that they have a lot of different options. So how, and I would love to hear Amy's take on this, how do we get to our end goal, which is customer loyalty, new customer acquisition, customer expansion? How do we get there when we have all of these challenges when it comes to loyalty? But I think I like the idea of focusing on the effortless experience, because when they do have a pain point, and going back to customer support, which AI chatbots are being implemented quite a lot in these areas. When it comes to customer support, they're already experiencing some pain quite often. So the quicker and the most, if you can offer a way to resolve their pain point with an effortless experience for them, that to me is the key. I was actually on a chat with a very large company who has all of the resources possible to them, and I could not get an answer. And to me, it didn't seem like it was AI that I was talking to, because they weren't catching any of the nuance of my pain point. It was just, well, send us a screenshot. I can't do a screenshot from this. You're not allowing me to upload one. So all of a sudden, here I am just getting more and more frustrated. And the effort for me to resolve my pain point was too great. And I abandoned it. And now in my mind, I have a very negative experience stuck in my head.
Amy, I feel you. I can't wait to hear what you have to say on this, please.
Yeah, it's so important what you're talking about, Di, in terms of, you have sort of these moments where you're interacting with customers, and it's important to nail every single one of those. We're looking for a magical solution. We want AI to come in, swoop in. You just apply AI and all of a sudden everything's going to be better. But I think it's a little bit harder than that. What you were saying keyed me into something I like to say, which is, if we're a mess on the inside, the resulting experience is going to be a mess as well. And so what that means to me is there's application of AI internally and there's application of AI externally, consumer facing. But how we approach AI internally is going to have external ramifications, right? So to your point about calling the call center system and the data that is available to that call center system, and how the call center system interacts with the website, the mobile app, et cetera, so that the call center associate has a full 360 view of you as a customer. What makes you tick? What is the context of the situation, so that they can personalize their interaction with you? And like, to your point, we can start to connect some of the dots to then improve the experience externally. the same thing happened with, the digital revolution, where there's a lot of digital solutions like they're hammers looking for nails, right? So solutions looking for problems. And sometimes we automated bad processes. Sometimes we applied digital, but we didn't fix the core process issue or the legacy system, right? So now I think there's a huge opportunity for Ascendle specifically to work with companies to start to figure out how to strategically, to your point, apply AI to the business process so that the customer pains that are happening as a result of those processes and policies are actually improved. And then when you go to the customer side, I'm sure everyone watching has experienced going to a website and interacting with the bot and sort of like throwing up our hands and going, oh my gosh, forget this. Like, I'm not going to get the answers I need. So the problem now is, that these interactions, right now, they're sort of hard coded. Over time, they're going to be sort of more personalized, more thoughtful, more truly conversational. But as somebody interacts and tries to self-service, if that fails, they're going to try to search. And if that fails, they might try the bot. And if that fails, they might get piped to a live agent. And if that fails, they might want to call. So I call them like cascading safety nets, but each fall that the customer experiences, each fail in the system depletes the trust, so that by the end of it, the frustration sort of increasing. But there's an opportunity to connect up those channels and sort of catch people immediately and direct them to the right channel seamlessly, so that they're not experiencing this frustration that ultimately is wasting everyone's time and, causing problems.
And it makes me think about just this age of instant gratification and what most consumers expect. I think very fondly about the early days of my career, which I'm dating myself here, where we had what was coined the FedEx mentality, when FedEx got really good at shipping things overnight. Then all of a sudden, every customer wanted us to ship. We were actually shipping actual things. It was before the internet we were shipping large files, right? Before the internet was up to speed. Just because they wanted it overnight. And now we have gotten to this age of, because we are so used to having instant gratification. How many times have you been out to dinner and you're having a conversation and you're talking about a movie? What was the name of that movie that Julia Roberts was in, where she went to Italy? Oh, let me just grab my phone. That was Eat, Pray, Love, or whatever it is. We're so used to having that answer to everything at the tip of our fingers that now I think we have a very short fuse when it comes to interacting with technology, because we expect, well, why isn't there chatbot and AI enabled, right? It would have been able to pick up what I was putting down much quicker.
Yeah, you're making me think too about like we talk about humanizing AI experiences, but really humans are being machinified, meaning like we're expected to like be more productive and do all these things. And, it's sort of giving us superpowers, but it makes you contemplate like what's for the machines, what's for the humans, and, where's the overlap there?
This has been a common theme. And what is, it would see, the value proposition is that, well, the machine will do all these mundane tasks, so you'll have more time. The implication is more time to have fun, but it's not turning out that way. It's like, I'm just exponentially more productive. I'm still working 80 hours a week. You know what I'm saying? So like, it's this idea, like, it's not really shaking out the way that it was sold, in that like, oh, the machines are doing all the work, so I get to spend 40 hours more a week with my family. It's like, no, I'm working more now, just as much as I ever have. I'm more productive. And then, as you both were speaking, this is, I think, like AI actually overcomplicating things. There was a comedian who said, "Do you know what I used to do to get my car from the valet?" And if you can't see me right now, I literally just extended a ticket out of my hand. That was the step you had to take. Now you have to take out your phone, scan the QR code, download the app, go to the app, sign up for the app, right? It's like, this is 10 steps. Like I've added more steps. So I guess the question I have, and not to take a big right turn here, those actions benefit the platform. They do not benefit the human. They do not benefit the customer. Handing a ticket to a human is the lowest friction, easy way to get my car. Any more steps than that doesn't make any sense at all. It's not making it easier. It's making it better for the data collection. It's making it better for the platform. But it's not easier to hand somebody $2 and a ticket. So, Amy, like I know this is a big part of your background. How does one make the distinction on these implementations that will really serve the human and not necessarily serve, quote, the machine, if you will?
Yeah, absolutely. I believe in establishing sort of a North Star vision for the experience that gets into ultimately what are people's explicit needs and what are their implicit needs. And you get there through what I call co-creation, participatory design with the people, right? So understanding what are the pains, what are the impacts. Data is great. NPS data is great. Everything from the data lake is great, and it should be synthesized, and hopefully AI will spit us out some good insights. That's all well and good, but making is research. And when you make with people and envision what an experience could be like, you're going to uncover their value proposition, and you're going to start to understand, once you've played it forward and sort of illustrated this future state, you're going to understand what could go really right with it and what could go really wrong with it. And I believe in the pendular theory of change, again, pointing back to futures thinking. So the pendular theory of change says that stuff is going to swing one way and then it's going to come back the other way. And I do believe that in some sense, what you're keying into is that businesses that want to differentiate themselves are going to actually say, you know what, you don't need the app. You're going to get a person. Maybe you're going to pay a premium for that experience, or maybe the business figures out how to kind of leverage technology behind the scenes so that your experience is fluid. But when you get to like what matters most to customers and use that as the launchpad for innovation, it's going to result in more spot on experiences, so to speak.
The theme here I'm hearing, like what matters most to customers. And and you're both nodding. It sounds like from both of your perspectives, the outcome is heavily weighed towards the quality of these questions. And the visual that you're giving me, Amy, and going back to the valet, how technology would be helpful there is if I didn't even have to open my mouth. If I was walking towards the valet and he said, "Hey, Mr. Cinquino, your car is right here," because there was some technology in place that I even had to do less steps and hand a ticket. Like where I'm completely it's like now this is even a better experience. So like nearing the end of the episode here, could you maybe share some of your top questions that leaders and technologists could be asking around this technology on the front end, perhaps, that we feel could be helpful for them? And Amy, you hit on one right there, but I'm sure there are some others from both of your purviews.
Yeah, so I think it's a great reminder that whatever your North Star is, which for most of the companies we are working with, they are serving customers in some form or another. We are a technology company, but we solve business problems with technology. We are not a technology first company. And that's what we have to remind our clients quite often is, at the end of the day, it's not about the technology and thinking, they come to us, we want to use this technology. And then we pretty quickly turn the conversation around to, well, but what is your end goal, and how will this affect the customer, and how will it affect your business? And so I think just always being mindful that we should not be technology first. Again, just because we can doesn't mean we should, and that we have to keep focused on the customer pain points, and our ultimate goal, which as businesses, it typically involves bringing in more revenue and customer satisfaction experience, and effortless experiences is what contributes to that.
So just to give that back to you, it sounds like one of the tenets or guardrails here that Amy was talking about to make sure that you're scaling the good and not the not good, is really asking that question: is this a is this continuing to be a human-centered effort, a human-centered technology implementation? And it sounds like that's a big part of making sure that it stays where it needs to, and then also the maximum benefit, then of course for maximum revenue. Is that accurate?
Yes, I would say that's accurate. And we've had a lot of discussion. It's come up in many of our discussions about AI replacing the need for humans. You know, we still maintain that AI just makes our human efforts better, and it should be used to enhance the human experience. But I think, again, to your point of the person wanting to get their car from the valet, to completely remove the human experience is not going to result in a better customer experience. So how do we continue to leverage these modern tools, which are changing by the week, allowing us to do more, but how do we leverage it in a way that we're still inserting the human and the empathy? We could have a whole other discussion on empathy, right? Amy, it's come
Another
up.
episode.
Another episode.
Exactly. And that makes me think of, especially for leaders, whatever is measured is managed. And so measurement's really important. And I actually think there's a dearth of good measures in the industry. And I'll use an example. So hospitals measure patient satisfaction, and they make decisions on improvements that they can make based on those measures. And there are other measures as well that are tracked and managed too, and can be the fuel for process improvement and innovation. But things like how many people died of preventable disease, and what could we have done to improve, their health in those regards, or how many years of life were lost based on, average lifespan minus preventable disease, et cetera. So these types of things, it's like a health organization exists to presumably add life to your years and years to your life. Is that truly being measured and innovated with, right? If you look at health insurance companies, many people avoid care because they can't afford it. Ultimately, that is bad for the people avoiding care. And it's bad for the insurance company if it affects how people perceive their insurance, perceive that brand, are loyal to that brand, et cetera. So it has business impact, but those types of things like care avoidance aren't necessarily measured by the insurance companies. So if you really want to figure out like how to accomplish real transformation, leveraging possibility of AI, let's set our sights farther than the traditional business measures would be my challenge to leaders today.
And it's a great point, which we didn't really touch upon yet in this episode, about the data. We are sitting on so much data. And so for the average company that is wondering or the average business, where do I start? It may be in making sure that your data is of quality and accessible so that the AI can be, scraping the data to help in all kinds of ways, whether it's identifying trends, making a patient healthier, being able to use predictive analysis. So I think it's a great place to start, starting with the data and getting it accessible in the cloud, ready to be used by AI, which opens up a whole world of possibilities.
Diana, we were hoping to close the episode with something that is not being discussed enough. Do you feel like that is the thing, or is there something else that you feel needs to come out or be discussed?
I think, as a general, let's not lose sight of the basics. Data being one of them, right? As a company that uses technology, We know the saying, garbage in, garbage out. So your data should be clean and accessible. And then when it comes to customer experience and new features, it's don't lose sight of the basics of talking to your customers and understanding what their pain points are so that you can effectively solve it with the right solution, whether that is AI or not.
Thank you for that. Amy, do you feel that I know there's a lot, but do you feel there's something that in particular you could hone in on that isn't being discussed, but should be on every company's radar, every leader's mind?
Yeah, I would say a balance with short-term business results and long-term business longevity and success and impact. So if you don't have a long-term vision for what kind of experience you're trying to deliver and what impact you're trying to make, how do you know where you're going, right? I think, many businesses, especially publicly traded organizations, have fiduciary responsibility to deliver shareholder value. However, if there's also a vision that the organization is making strides in achieving, that could build advocacy and sort of patience with the long-term voyage. So I think even sort of how we look at the whole, socio-political financial picture, it's like, first have a vision for the difference you're trying to make in the world. A lot of clients I work with don't have a vision for where they're trying to go, what kind of business they want to be in 3 years, 5 years. What does the experience look like? Why do customers love them? How have they remediated these pain points? It's very sort of reactive. Okay, what are we going to do next in the next 3 to 12 months? And it just feels like we're never meaningfully moving the dial to get those double-digit gains on the business results that would truly be transformational.
Amy, thank you for that. Thank you, listeners, for joining us on another episode of Ascendle Unscripted. We've had the pleasure of having Amy Heymans, founder and chief strategy officer at Beneficent, and Ascendle's own president, Diana Bourns. Thank you both. Ascendle Unscripted is available on all major platforms. If you like what you heard, please hit the subscribe button, and we always look forward to seeing you on the next episode of Ascendle Unscripted.